not a ton of experience playing the new stages yet, but I do have some on every map mode at this point. So a couple of these are a little bit shaky, and there's still some things that I'm figuring out about them. But I feel like I know enough at this point to want to say a few things about the stages. And we're going to do these in two parts, because last time I did this video, it was actually pretty long. And I think I can shorten it down by just cutting it into two pieces here, separating it by stage. So instead of doing Robo-en and Bluefin both in one video, I'm going to do those two separately. So, Robo-en is one of the best stages that they have added to Splatoon 3. It is really, really fun. And there are a lot of things that they do better on this map than they do on a lot of the others that they have added to it. So I want to talk about a couple of those main things, and then we'll go mode by mode and talk about whether there are any like specific things from those modes to keep in mind as you're playing it for yourself. So, the biggest strength of this stage, in my opinion, is the fact that you can go to the other side of the map without having to go through mid. Just think about how many Splatoon stages there are, for a minute, that have that property. This is one of the things that made the Reef really good in Splatoon 2, that you could go all the way around the zone and never really have to be in range of anybody who's trying to shoot it. And you could do that in multiple ways, and the same is true here. If I am scared of what's on the zone, I can just drop off this way. And this is the most exposure that I ever get to anybody who's on zone before I get to the other side of the map, and I'm in the enemy side. On some modes, I could even infiltrate the enemy base straight from here. And I just have the freedom to be able to do that. But I can also just do that on the other side. It's not like this is a one-way idea. I can also swim all the way over here and go this way and go underneath. And obviously, both of these routes have counterplay. There are places where I can get shot from. But the fact that I have the option makes it way, way more fluid, free-flowing, easy to play. There are other maps in this game where you have one way and it's through mid, and so the enemy knows that, and all they have to do is chuck bombs at the one particular place you get to pass through, and now there's a roadblock. And now the game boils down to either you are too far forward and you get splatted, or you are not too far forward and you don't. Whereas, if I'm trying to go left here, and there's like a Hydra watching me up there, and someone chucks a booyah bomb on this spot, and 3 people are chucking bombs at me, I can just go someplace else and still be able to advance forward. I can rotate instead of having to brute force my way through. And it's just insane how few maps in this game allow you to do that. It's like the Bechdel test. You'd think it would be easy to pass, but so many maps don't. So, really, really cool map for that reason. A couple of things that I also like about it. First of all, this is a map it does a lot of, with the notable exception of this area right here, it does a lot of good things with like right side peek. You can right side peek from here, you can right side peek from here, you can right side peek from here. It gives you positions as a backliner where you can feel relatively comfy. And this position right here, I feel like this one could have been a little bit too dominant, and so they may have made it just a little bit more exposed by making it a left side peek for that exact reason. But it's still very usable, and it's still really good against people coming this way, for example. I've also seen a lot of like longer range backline weapons playing from here as well to mix things up. You've got a couple of different options for where to stand, and that will make it more difficult for you to get like bombed out or something, especially since you're hidden from this side by the walls and whatnot. So good backline positions, but also if you're a frontline weapon, look at this beautiful sequence of ramps with paintable walls. Look at this wall right here. Like, this is a playground. This is a jungle gym right here. I can come up this wall. I can come up this ramp and then hide behind this ramp and wait to pop out and right side peek from here. I can, instead of doing that, sneak up this way. I can maybe just like try to hit some shots up there if I've got a weapon with long enough range to do it. Or I can sneak all the way around down here. And all of that is with relative cover from enemy players. which means, again, I just have more options for where I can go and what I can do on this map than I do in a lot of other places. There are more ways to move around the map. There are more ways to defend yourself from people moving around at you. I could position myself here as a backline weapon and watch this side. I could position myself up here and watch this side. Or, maybe back here. I could take this sort of angle to attack this left side. Like, there are multiple options for controlling multiple different areas of the map, and you can move around fluidly between them with relative safety. And I think that's all really good for it. The zone is a pretty reasonable size. It's not too difficult to cap, especially when you have control, but it is also something you're capable of holding on to. It's not like one of those miniature, undertow zones where there's just no way in heck you're going to control that until you have, cleared the enemy team out thoroughly. There's no outpainting them for it. They are going to be able to recap it. So, pretty good size there, good location, no complaints about that. And then, once you've got it capped, there are ways you can move forward to hold. And they're not super advantageous either, which is good. That means that there's more volatility. It's relatively easy for the enemy team to push back in, because this is really exposed on your way through into the enemy base. It is a choke point, and you can kind of try and chuck bombs at it and stuff, but there's nowhere to hide really either. So once they do get line of sight on you, they are going to have ways to shove you out of this choke point. So this, it's the strongest choke point on the map for sure. This is the spot where you can really hold out and try to lock them out from getting into the zone. But you don't really have the cover to work with, and so at some point it's going to be relatively easy for them to make a special push and force you back. And at that point you're playing the game, because now you have to fight on all of this open ground. Once you've forced them out of that choke point, you have access to this area down here, bottom right, bottom left. You have all these different ways you could approach the zone, and it really does feel like it's team versus team, player versus player, not that you're just fighting the map the whole way forward. Really, really, really fun. Every match feels like a dogfight. Every match feels like the team that fought best as a team was the one that won the game. Tower control is one of the most significant changes in the map. The tower path is really odd. It reminds me a lot, the map in general reminds me a lot of Muscle Forge Fitness from Splatoon 2. And the tower path does something very similar to what it does there, which is it starts off by dropping down from mid to the left-hand side over here, and then goes through this Death Star trench and comes over to the right side again. So to start with, this first checkpoint is going to blow by very quickly. It's a relatively tall tower, and when you get it over to this point, you'll see that there's not really any place reasonable to stand that has high ground over you. It's a scary thing when they give the tower high ground, because that means that pushing through there, it's going to snowball really quickly. You just get a backline weapon up here in good position, and it's really hard to approach now all of a sudden. So this first checkpoint is going to go by very quickly, and whoever wins the first fight should probably just get it for free. After that, it becomes a lot less safe, because it descends like this. This position right here is still a little funky. It's actually probably not the hardest thing to get this checkpoint, because if you've won the fight that got you the first check, then you probably have players up here by this point in time, and so it's going to be hard to get into a position where you can defend the second checkpoint. But where the tower becomes really difficult to keep pushing is when it goes through this trench below, because at that point you have low ground against everybody, and this grate actually favors the offense in some ways, because it gives them the ability to fire down at the tower from above. Once it's down there, you can kind of just, right side peek like this and hit people who are down there and just back up to complete safety very quickly when the opponents start trying to fire back. The walls down there will also really limit the tower's visibility. So this might be a map, and again, I haven't seen this one played a whole lot, but this might be a map where the position where you're trying to defend it from is actually while it's moving freely through the trenches here. A couple of interesting things here. This rail, if you paint it you can, in theory, get up onto it, even as the attacking team. So that can be a way that you, even without using the tower, are able to traverse that area and get to the enemy side. Now, it's not like this is any safer than just walking across the bridge, and in fact, it's probably less safe, if anything, because this is so visible. But it is a way across, at least, and the attacking or the defending team can, of course, counter that by painting it themselves. But it's nice to have a couple of different ways around to kind of make them keep them guessing, like, oh, am I going to go here? And nope, I'm going to go this way instead. You've got some interesting movement ideas for getting from one place to another. Something that we also almost saw there was the jumps from the tower, which again give the offensive side a few more options for getting people into positions where they can defend the tower reasonably from attacking players. So you can, of course, jump from here to here. You could probably jump into the rail there. You can also, once this comes up, jump across to here, and that gives you access to this area, which it would be, phenomenal for cutting off this part of the map right here, where they'll try and defend from the tower advancing to the final checkpoint. And then one of the nice things also for the attacking team is that if you've got a long-range weapon, they can just stand back here the whole time. They can just be, in some kind of position like this, where, yeah, this corner right here is going to be really awkward for them, but once it comes around, or once they get to this kind of a position, that backliner isn't out of play. They can just kind of rotate with the tower because they've got the high ground on the other side of it, and they can use that to help them defend as they move up. So there's a lot of really interesting level geometry here that gives you, again, a lot of options for how to play it. And one of my favorite things about it as well is how much of this center pillar is paintable. I would love for this to also be paintable, but, we can't have everything. But, like, being on this side and being able to go up from here and just have cover from the enemy team while you get the height and then you come over the top, that sort of thing is really cool. And it doesn't take a ton of time to get from here to here. So being able to sneak up like that, especially if someone committed to like tracking you down here and they're fighting you, and then all of a sudden you go up over the top and shoot them from above, and you do this sort of thing, or you just bypass them entirely and run around, like, those are a lot of really cool options that you have in that spot. So I like the way that this area is designed. I'm not sure how I feel about this block being the only paintable wall over here. My hunch is that I like it better when it's just traversable the way that it is in zones, but I haven't really seen the way that that plays in a competitive setting yet, and so I'm going to wait and see before, reserve judgment before I get to that. All right, Rainmaker routes. The left one is like the obvious, let's keep the team push going sort of option, but it is possible to jump straight from mid to the checkpoint on the right. So while that gives you far fewer options for advancing further, because like this route is just so exposed and dangerous and gives the opposing team a lot of time to recover, if you need a quick checkpoint, it's pretty easy to just kind of do this. Like, this is so fast. But the advantage of going the left side is that you start your push from high ground after you get the first checkpoint. Because in Rainmaker, you're basically always going to have to make a second push once you get that dunk down. You win a fight, you take the time to pick it up, you move it all the way over here, you get all the way up the pedestal, you dunk it, you wait for it to come down, you pop it again. That's enough time for the enemy team to be back. And when the enemy team is back and fighting you, you'd rather be able to, play around this high ground to be able to see them because you have this, little bit of cover to work with and everything. You'd rather be in this kind of a position than to be all the way down here where, for example, a backliner up here just gets free shots on you and gets to back up whenever they want. Where you don't have as much that you can hide behind, and even hiding behind here, they're going to have an angle where they might be able to hit you from up there. And you're going to have to jump onto this, which is unpaintable. You cannot possibly swim in this. And then jump again to get up here, and even then you're going to have to paint for yourself. Like, there's much less of a potential to make a strong team push from this direction unless you can just bypass that whole area I swam through before I exploded without being attacked by the enemy team. That's basically the only situation where that's ever going to be safe. But one of the things that I really love about this is actually from the defensive perspective. Because that right side route, the fact that it exists, it's still valuable, even if it's going to be the more dangerous option, even if people are probably not going to want to prefer that. Because on defense, if you get the Rainmaker and, you've popped it, but then you're running into resistance in mid and you're about to go down and you don't want to go down this close to your base, you can just do this. You can just fall down and run it this way. And now the enemy has to back all the way up and chase you. I got down to like a push to 34 or something doing this in a match of solo at one point. And granted, a competitive team is going to clamp down on that a lot faster. But since the threat is there, it alleviates a lot of pressure. And again, this comes back to one of the biggest strengths of the stage, which is you have so many options that there aren't as many real choke points that you have to force your way through just with specials or something. You can make plays with movement instead of making plays with brute force. And that's super cool. And even just the threat of this route right here is really good for the map and making it feel like the lockouts aren't as bad, making it feel like you have a fluid offense that your offense can go when it wants to and have a number of different possible game plans. Lots and lots of fun. Big fan of this map mode from what little I've played of it so far. I have played a pretty good amount of Clam Blitz on this map. I don't think I have a ton to say about it other than it's good. It again, a lot of the same strengths that you got on other maps. This is a very vanilla version of this map. There's nothing super weird about it. It looks like a lot of the others pretty much exactly. The basket's in a really good spot because this area down here is kind of a kill zone, but the offensive team has a staging area that they can use to try and get in there. The defending team has a lot of high ground around it. So the spot on the map that should be the most dangerous is the most dangerous, but every team has something they can do to play around it. You've also got the threat of the right side flank here, of someone sneaking in this way, which again, very exposed, very dangerous, but if it's not seen, because it's at an awkward angle, and your general objective line is going to have you looking this way more than you're looking this way, you might still get some opportunities to maybe sneak something in, maybe get a flank off that lets people jump into you. And so it allows for multiple different strategies and multiple angles of attack. You can take different pieces of map geometry just based on what your team wants, what their win condition is, and it supports a lot of different kinds of ideas for how to play. As far as clam throws, you have to jump off to get one from there, but you can. One other option that you've got, and I really like this because it lets you make the clam throw without actually leaving the high ground and ending up in the dead zone like it does over there, is if you've already got the enemy team cleared out and they're still respawning and trying to scramble into position, what you can do is you can hop up here, and if you're standing right on this corner, in theory you can actually make it without jumping if you're right next to the corner. But that's pretty precise positioning. I'd recommend just jump throwing it. And then from there, there's a clam spawn here, so you might get lucky and just get more that you can work with. But you can also kind of set up on this high ground here and try to lock them out like this. So this is kind of a stretch goal where if you get a wipe at the right time, you can really make it difficult for the enemy team to get back in by getting people up here. And then the beauty of it is that you get into trouble here, they start forcing you out, bye. And now you're on low ground that's really difficult to contest. You could be going in any direction. You could be trying to go back in this way, probably not because they're chasing you. You could be backing up at this angle and keeping an eye on them, and now you've got right side peek advantage from retreating in this direction. So very fluid if you're able to get in there. Like I, implied earlier, it's not very easy to get up here. This is a stretch goal, like I said. Most of the time, you're probably just going to be making this kind of a play. But if you have, the awareness that the enemy team isn't ready to defend yet, and you got a couple of extra seconds to maybe line this kind of a throw up, this can be huge for letting you get a better hold of the enemy basket and make yourself much more of a nuisance, much more difficult to remove, while your team comes in from the left and you've got these off angles on the players who are going after them. One thing that I forgot to mention about zones in I think one of the other modes is I really like these grates right here. These grates give you the option to approach something like a backliner that's set up here, to kind of try and sneak up on them a little bit. But it's also very exposed and you're left side peeking, and so the backliner, they're threatened and they have to look that way. They can't just look over here and like expect not to get shot, but they do have counterplay. It makes it feel very balanced between, you know, the matchup with the frontliner moving up this way and the backliner trying to stop them. I'm a huge fan of the way that that's balanced. So like I said, huge fan of this map. I think it's really well designed. I hope a lot more maps kind of go in this direction of giving the players so much freedom, so many movement options, so many paintable walls. Is a huge part of why all of this works, is that so many of these walls, these sides of ramps and everything are paintable here. I am really happy with how much the map design has improved since the beginning of the game, and if we keep getting maps like these, I think we're going to be a lot happier in the end game of Splatoon 3 for it. So I'm looking forward to what Nintendo pulls out in future for their original maps, for the new maps that are designed exclusively for Splatoon 3.